Hello folks, Simon here and welcome back to the channel and to our first video here in 2021. So happy new year to you all. I hope you've all had a fairly pleasant Christmas, at least I guess as pleasant as things can be given the current circumstances. So kicking things off for our first video in 2021, we're going to be continuing on with our new threat FF7 playthrough, and I'm going to be showing you the Bottomswell boss encounter. Now the main focus for today is going to be explaining to you how you can steal from this boss. Now the problem with trying to steal from Bottomswell is it is a long range attacker, and so you can't just steal because you're going to get that error message that you can't reach. Now you might think, well, just stick the steal materia onto a long range party member such as Yuffie or Barrett. It doesn't work, and that's because I believe steal is now an innately melee ability, so even on a long range party member you're still going to receive that cannot reach message. Now you might think, what about the long range materia? Can you use that with steal? Well, I'm not sure, and that's because even though you had access, I believe you had access to the long range materia by this point in the original game, you don't in New Threat. However, there is a workaround, and it involves using Yuffie and her innate ability. So I'm going to go through the process with you. A little bit complicated, but follow what I do and you should get those silver glasses without too much trouble. There's also a morph you're probably going to want to get, so make sure you equip that materia as well. Anyway folks, here's the video, here's the strategy. Enjoy. First things first then, let's go over some basic stats. Bottomswell is a level 25 boss here in the Final Fantasy VII New Threat mod with 7,500 HP, so quite a big boost over the original counterpart. Now it does drop a War Gong, or you can steal some silver glasses and morph a Fury Ring. One thing to note is that Bottomswell is weak to lightning magic, so make sure you have Bolt equipped. In terms of party setup, I've gone for Cloud, of course mandatory, along with Yuffie and Barrett. Now, I've given that aforementioned Bolt materia to Yuffie simply because she had the highest magic stat of the three. You know, I want to make the most of the extra damage there. Cloud I have, however, given enemy skill, so that he can combine that with his limit breaks and do damage each round despite not being a long range attacker. Barrett is mostly going to be here for healing, but I have of course got him in the rank so that he can use his ranged attacks when he's not healing, which is a nice bit of extra damage as well. Not a huge amount, but it helps. Don't forget to have Sense and Morph equipped. There we go, we've got the silver glasses, I'll explain how in a moment. But Cloud is just going to unleash some potent enemy skills here. We do just need to get that 7,500 HP whittled down as soon as we can. This boss does have some very nasty attacks. But before we go any further, how did I get those silver glasses and how did I do so easily? Well, as I mentioned, this has to do with Yuffie's innate ability. If you're still not aware of Yuffie's innate ability, it's actually a multi-level ability. It does different things. For example, I think it's one enemy max per battle will drop double the amount of gil when Yuffie is in the party. And also she has the Throwlet, which means that after 15 rounds in a battle, she'll be able to defend and then throw a shuriken for a ton of damage. But what we're interested in is the other part of her innate ability, which means that when she is attacked with a physical ability by an enemy, as long as she's in the front row, she will counter with Mug, and it doesn't matter if the enemy is ranged, this will still work. So you must make sure that Yuffie is in the front row. If you've already started the battle and she's in the back row, then you don't need to quit. Just simply tap left when it comes up to her turn on the D-pad or whatever it is that you're using in order to use the change command. That will move her into the front row if she's not there already. And then just wait for Bottomswell to attack Yuffie physically. As long as she's not been disabled by one of the status effects in this fight, then she will counter with Mug. And that is how you are able to steal the silver glasses. So yeah, it took a bit of figuring out that one, because obviously we naturally would keep a ranged attacker like Yuffie in the back row. But that is actually counterintuitive if you do want to get that item for this fight. Now, Bottomswell will, as in the original version of this encounter, still use its bubble ability. And the only way to break that is with magic attacks. So you will need, at least in my case, I'm assuming it's going to be the same for yourselves, you will need 2 magic attacks to break that bubble. So I would advise that every party member also has equipped at least 1 magic spell. Now, Yuffie, of course, is going to have bolt magic in my case anyhow. But I do also make sure that Barret and Cloud are equipped with various magics. I think Cloud has ice and Barret has fire. And that's, as I say, mostly just to break through those bubbles. Physical attacks won't do the trick. You do need to use that magic. Now, as is the case with many of the bosses throughout New Threat, you'll find that Bottomswell does become more dangerous as the fight goes on. Starts to gain access to some other more damaging abilities. So don't take things for granted early on in the encounter. Make sure you do keep those heals at the ready. And just try and do a whole ton of damage before the fight gets too dangerous. One other thing that I want to note is that I couldn't get Cross Slash to paralyze this boss. So it's probably immune to that effect. But let me know in the comments if you have any luck with actually, getting that paralysis effect to hit Bottomswell. But in the end, I just stuck to using Braver since it does overall more damage than Cross Slash. Without that effect, it just makes Braver more superior. Obitsuru there is part of Yuffie's Throwlet ability. Remember, you'll throw a random shuriken after 15 turns with Yuffie, which usually does a nice amount of damage as well. Just make sure that if you're going to be morphing Bottomswell into the Fury Ring, I would advise that you do so, that you really do pay attention to its HP levels as it starts to get low. I would, as it starts to get under like 200 HP, pretty much stick to just using magic-based attacks. Attacks that you know how much damage they do. I think Ice, for example, in my case, does about 40 points of damage. Obviously not a lot, fairly useless ability, but in terms of just doing a little bit more damage, but not quite enough to kill Bottomswell at the end of its HP, it's really, really helpful. Don't use physical attacks, though, as it gets low, because obviously they can crit, and you don't want to kill it, and then have to restart the entire encounter just to get that Fury Ring. By the way, the Fury Ring, it ain't great, but it does have its uses. What it does is it puts Berserk on a party member automatically just by equipping it. So not really useful for fights where you need to strategize quite heavily. But if you're just going like running around doing some grinding and stuff, having Berserk with the haste effects and everything that comes with it, just to get through encounters quickly, it can be a good time saver, so it can be useful for grinding. So I would recommend getting it, that's the morph. Oh, and something else to note, in the original encounter against Bottomswell, it would damage itself with the Tidal Wave ability, in a similar way that Apps would damage itself with its Tsunami ability in the Sewers battle. However, that's no longer the case here in New Threat. As a matter of fact, it's a good job that the Tidal Wave doesn't affect Bottomswell, because in this version of the encounter, it is actually going to absorb water-based attacks. So the fact that the boss won't be damaging itself, coupled with the fact that you're going to be spending, 2 characters' turns in order to break these bubbles regularly, means that this can be quite a drawn-out encounter, unfortunately. One thing I did find fairly helpful was Laser. It does about 300 points of damage. It's an enemy skill that we picked up earlier on, and it's just one of the nice abilities to give to Cloud, in my opinion, so that he can do a fair bit of damage there as we make our way through the encounter. You might be tempted to use Beta. I was myself at first, but I decided it's just not worth it. Beta's been nerfed quite heavily in New Threat. The status effects don't work in this fight from Beta, and it still costs a ton of MP. So, best off saving that for when it's actually going to be useful. As I say, for now, I generally just stuck to using Laser, and that did the job absolutely fine. In all honesty, Bottomswell certainly isn't the toughest fight of those that we've encountered so far in terms of bosses, but trying to get its steel and the morph can be a little bit of a, exercise in frustration. But if you just follow along with the tips that I've shared here, then hopefully it shouldn't take you too long. I think we did about 3 or 4 attempts on this fight when I was streaming over at Twitch, but that's mostly because we went in blind and had to spend an attempt or two just figuring out how to get these silver glasses. Once we've done that, then the rest of the fight is pretty much a formality. Oh, and Bottomswell does like to cast Silence, which is a little bit annoying at the best of times, so just make sure you have a healthy supply of echo screens coming into this encounter, and obviously you can deal with that. So we're getting down to about 134 HP now, which means that we're not quite at the stage where we can morph, since I think morph, in my case, does about 27 points of damage. But this is why, as I say, I do have that ice magic. 48 points of damage, it cannot crit, and obviously that's going to take a few less hits than, trying to cast morph at 27. Just make sure you stay on top of healing. It'd be annoying to lose at this stage, especially because Bottomswell does hit quite hard. You can make use of Barrier and Magic Barrier, but I never really felt the need to. It's there if you want it. But I don't think there's too much else I really need to say about this one. It is a fun fight. I enjoyed it. A little bit annoying trying to figure out how to steal the item. But now that I've shared that with you guys, hopefully you won't have to have the same frustrating experience that we had to have over at Twitch as I was streaming. Okay then guys, well that's it. Let's just go ahead and break Yuffie out of her bubble here, as we do just the last bit of damage to the boss, ready to put it into morphing range. Of course, it's typical that Bottomswell would cast Bubble on our morphing character right as it goes below 40 HP. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, anyway, we've broken that bubble now, so a couple of morphs here, and that should be the end of this one. 639 damage. Yeah, that hurts. That hurts a lot. Right, there we go. So, one thing to note is that the boss will also end the fight with a tidal wave, probably killing Barrett here. Oh, it missed. How fortunate. That's the end of the encounter then, guys. So, we got all the items we wanted to get. We got the boss defeated. And we can move on with our adventure. So, hopefully, this will be helpful to you. If you were able to get that steal and that morph, then please do let us know in the comment section. And if you can think of any uses for the Fury Ring outside of what I've suggested with farming, lower level enemies perhaps, you know, a little bit quicker, then I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that as well. A lot of people in Twitch chat were saying it's a useless item. But have a great day, folks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.